Good morning and welcome to Monday Mornings with Margie. I'm happy to be here today and sorry that I haven't been here for the last couple weeks, but I was on vacation and now I'm back. I have a really special guest who I'm psyched to have here, and I'm gonna let Meriah Gillard introduce herself, because usually people do a better job than I do introducing themselves. So I will let you take the floor to let people know who you are.
All right, well, happy Monday, everyone. My name is Meriah, and I am the Assistant Director at NAMI Greater Des Moines, and NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Love being an advocate for mental health and spreading the word about that. Yeah.
Great. So one of the things that, Meriah and I touched base on beforehand was the idea of stigma in mental health. This is a topic we hear a lot about. It's not like a new thing. However, I think that even though we've seen improvements in this area, it's still an ongoing issue for many people. So I think it's relevant, and I think it's relevant to the times that we're in as well. So I guess my first question to you is, how do you think history and cultural norms play a role in the stigmatization of mental illness?
Yeah, I actually feel like it plays a huge role, culture and history. For me, speaking personally as an African-American woman, in our culture, it is truly still frowned upon to talk about mental health, mental illness. And I think that goes all the way back to our ancestors, when we were taught to be strong, and mental illness was a weakness and something that you could think away or pray away. And I think that yes, slowly we've been introducing a little bit more of breaking that stigma into our community. However, it's still very taboo, I think, to accept the mental health world.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it stems all the way back from our ancestors, and then just trying to, trying to really just keep going, but not getting the help that we need. And I think you can find it in almost any culture. There's kind of just like a taboo of pinpointing it as mental illness.
Sure. And I think that we, saw that, years ago, no matter what sort of race or ethnicity you were, where people who had mental health issues were put in institutions. And sometimes put in institutions never to be seen or heard from again with their families. And so it was sort of this thing everybody knew existed, but it was sort of out of sight, out of mind. And then I think when we started to realize that people with mental health issues do not need to be locked up, and they can live in the community with appropriate resources and supports, it started to help that process of changing the way people viewed mental illness. But the stigmatization, I don't think ever fully went away.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. What are some of the ways that you see stigma manifest itself, whether it's within families or within friendship groups or with providers, even, within the healthcare world? How do you think the stigma of mental health sort of surfaces or manifests itself?
I honestly think that it doesn't really come up always in the greatest ways. I think most times today, it takes a severe instance for people to take mental health seriously. And I think that stigma just rides with that. But in all actuality, 1 in 4 adults will be affected or impacted by mental illness throughout their lifetime. So it's really common for us to have it. However, we hide it. and we don't want people to know that there could potentially be a mental illness, or we aren't as mentally healthy as others. So I think that only creates bigger and bigger issues, because we're not taking care of the ones that are at hand, and then we're just piling on more and more to it. And I think that traditionally, like you had mentioned before, when people were labeled as mentally ill, they were usually put away. Today, we kind of see a split, especially here in Iowa. I feel like people end up going to jail a lot of times instead of getting the mental help that they need. And so it's just an ongoing cycle that I think it's not helping by us not talking about it. So I feel like we just keep validating the stigma by not talking about it and those issues.
Absolutely. One of the things when we at Achieve, where I'm the director of operations, when we open a new site, and we will have a grand opening, and often I'll say a few words. And one of the things I always say is, well, two main things. One is that depression in particular is the leading cause of disability worldwide. And it's interesting because when you think about how we talk about addressing health issues, you hear about things like, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, breast cancer, and not that those aren't important, illnesses that we need to have research and we need to make visible and help to try to prevent people from getting those things. But often you don't hear so much about like depression or anxiety, fundraisers for that kind of research on, mental health. And so I see like depression and anxiety along with other mental health disorders, but we focus, primarily here on depression and anxiety as the silent disorders. And that's sort of how I see it. And I see the silent disorders sort of speaking within that manifestation of, the silence, where families don't always talk about it. People don't talk about it within friendship groups. Sometimes people try to talk about it with their healthcare providers, and maybe it's overlooked. Or if they do have a diagnosed mental health issue, and they are having physical symptoms, sometimes those physical symptoms are negated as being related to their mental health issues. And so things go undiagnosed because people want to say, well, it's about your anxiety, or it's about your depression, or whatever the case might be. So it's an interesting, it's evolved, and we've come a ways from where we were even, 2 decades ago, but we got a long way to go. That's how I feel. And I think organizations like NAMI, and then I think organizations like ourselves at Achieve, trying to provide other options and resources for people is really key in this process.
Definitely. And something I was kind of thinking as you were just speaking was about kind of the shame that is associated with having these disorders, and so stigma and shame, I think, go hand in hand, because people don't want to speak about, I might be feeling depressed, or I might have anxiety, but why not, because we are all experiencing it. And then how you talked about it showing up in other ailments or other things in our bodies that might get overlooked, that's huge. I think that something that always comes to mind with me is speaking about my stomach hurts. And I think that was something that just felt natural for most people, to have their stomach be hurting. And then you kind of start asking more questions. Why is your stomach hurt? Are you sick? Did you eat something bad? You start asking questions. And then when they say no to all of those, they kind of just dismiss it. But that is screaming anxiety. And so the stigma and shame are preventing us from being able to properly diagnose that. And it really is such a shame.
And the connection, the mind-body connection, is just like in general a huge part. And I think we don't understand enough about it. And I don't think a lot of people take the time to try to understand it. But I think that's become more in the forefront, in the last decade as well, which is which is a good thing, but we need to keep moving. Speaking to the shame piece, I think that's huge. And I was thinking about how stigma impacts people who are struggling with mental health issues, and how it surfaces for them. And I mean, you shared a couple things, one in being shameful, and two, sometimes it comes out in health issues or feelings within the body that really are representative of the mental health issue going on. Are there other ways that you think, for people out there that might be listening, that how the stigma might affect or manifest itself in a person themselves who's struggling with this?
Definitely. I truly feel like it writes a false narrative for those people that are struggling with it, because they're not only battling their mental illness, but then they're also battling the idea of why is this happening to me, or like, what's wrong with me? And I think that is really why I just want to advocate for it, because there's nothing wrong with you. It's not, mental illness is not a choice. You don't choose to be mentally ill. It's not a character of you. It's biological. And I feel like people need to know that at the core, it's not you that is doing this. Going back to when we talked about culture, you can't just think out of situations. And I feel like a lot of times people were told, you're not depressed, you're sad, you're being weak, is what I always used to hear. And how hurtful for somebody that is going through that, to hear from family members, friends, when they know internally they're not choosing to be like this. And so I feel like it adds so much more weight onto the shoulders of those that are struggling with depression, anxiety, all of mental illness. And it's so unfortunate, because I think it prevents them from getting help, because it's so easy to just tell someone, snap out of it, stop being sad, snap out of it, you're not nervous, and when they cannot, then it just adds another level of barrier of, what do I do? And do I want to seek getting help? And someone telling me, no, it's all in your head, or deal with it yourself. And those shouldn't be your only two options. But I feel like a lot of times that's often what people think.
And I think even worse than all of that is people become suicidal at times, or attempt suicide, or successfully complete suicide. And I also think that is somewhat of a taboo subject in our country as well. And it's certainly a hard topic to talk about, but it's real. And, the goal about having these conversations and why they're so important, and why I try to do that, is because you want people to know and understand there are resources, there are supports, there are people, who are struggling, or family members or friends to know maybe how to support somebody in a different way, and be able to empathize with what they're going through. Because at the end of the day, we don't want suicide to be the option that somebody comes to as their answer.
Absolutely. And this yesterday in Minneapolis, a young Black gentleman committed suicide. And the comments that I was hearing initially were, Black people don't commit suicide. He didn't commit suicide. Black people don't do that. And that stigma right there, to me, was just alarming. Like, just, it was sounding off in my head, because to me, I just see this community that is so hurt, but they're not allowed to be hurt. And that is so tough. I mean, this young gentleman, just on the streets in front of people, committed suicide. And it was just so heartbreaking that I didn't feel like more people reached out to say, like, hey, our community, we need to come together right now. If you are hurt, let's hurt together. We need to be in this together. Instead, that young gentleman just felt all alone, and like he had no choice, probably because he couldn't talk to anyone, because the stigma of mental illness equals weakness, or mental illness you should be shameful for. And we should not have that, because let's face it, in today's society, with everything that's going on, everyone is having different feelings. Everyone's shifting how they view life. And that's tough. So it's normal to feel different with these times, but we need to be able to talk to people, because you can't just have all those thoughts in your head and then that's how you feel helpless. Like, that's how you feel alone, when in all actuality, we're here for you, and it is okay to feel that way. And I just really wish that more people were on board with that, because at one point or another, I know for a fact everybody within the last few months has felt some type of way, but maybe felt shameful to talk about it. But that's normal, and we need to normalize it. It's okay.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that the pandemic has done, in many ways, and we could talk about all the different ways, but related to what we're talking about, is it sort of heightened maybe things that have already existed or always existed, or existed within you, or existed within your family, or existed within your relationship, or existed within your community. There's like a magnifying glass. Everything is heightened, and there are far fewer distractions. And so people are sort of faced with, real life and with themselves. And, whether you have struggled with mental health issues before or you never have, this is a time where things are really pushing people in some ways to their limits. And then you sort of do the overtone of all the racial unrest and systemic racism and social media and politics. And it just creates, an unsettling time for people, where they need community and they need to feel connected to someone.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I feel like there is in a time where that should be, I need to go talk to someone, I need to connect with someone, I need to, sort out my thoughts with someone. In a time where I feel like we should be running to do that, again, that stigma brings up that barrier of, I don't think I should go talk to someone. I'm just going to keep these feelings to myself, which breaks my heart, because you shouldn't have to go through that. But also, we are all experiencing some type of something. And
Right.
So the stigma is truly preventing us from moving forward. I say this all the time. If everyone just went to a therapist, I truly wouldn't be a cure-all, but we would not be trying to figure out, ourselves on other people. And it would really just make the world go around and be happy.
It's sort of like when you're born, you get assigned a social security number and you get assigned a therapist.
That would be awesome, would it not? Can you imagine if people were going to therapy from like right out the womb?
Yeah. So, now that we've sort of talked about it, one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about are what resources do you see that are out there for people? And this is across the country. I know you're in Iowa, but what are the resources that you see that are available for people, especially if they don't feel like they maybe can go to a friend or a family member or whatever, and maybe they do feel alone? What are some of the things that you see are options for people?
Yeah. So the Make It Okay campaign, I think that is a great resource. It kind of just talks, I think it's a teaching tool for people, but also I feel like it kind of gives people with mental illness a shield, kind of, so that we can make it okay and kind of talk about it and break it down. One of my favorite things to say is that mental illness does not discriminate. And I feel like that's what we need to get across the board. It's not a rich illness. It's not a poor illness. It will get to everyone. Something really cool that I've seen over the past few months is offering teletherapy and Iowa actually, unfortunately, does not have the best mental health care system. We are far, far behind. However, like the teletherapy that is able to be offered is really helpful because you can connect with someone almost immediately. Right now, I think the waits are like anywhere from like 6 to 8 months to get into someone to talk to here in Iowa. But with that resource, you can take a quiz, and then you can, like, you are connected with a therapist, and it kind of helps you work through that. I think that unfortunately right now we are not doing in-person support groups because of the pandemic, and a few other ones just because, confidentiality and stuff like that. But I think that there is the community out there online with resources, and then I think just like people advocating out there to make it okay are resources kind of right now.
Sure.
And that's something that I'm working on really hard, is that there is still a lack of resources out here. There truly is. And I think that's another barrier in it, is that along with the stigma, we have that barrier of getting people connected to when they identify that they might have an issue or something, that then what?
Sure.
Like I find it legally, I find it with individuals, with family members. And so I'm really trying to advocate for that and, make a difference that way too.
Sure. That's great. I was lucky to have you.
Thank you.
As an advocate and someone who cares passionately, clearly about these issues. And, we hope, achieve hopes in coming in Iowa that we are another tool in the mental health toolbox. What we do for TMS is not a cure-all, but we've seen some amazing results, and it provides another opportunity for people as well who are struggling with depression. And so we're psyched to be out, in the Iowa community, and to be in other states, hopefully soon in the Midwest as well, so that we see less people who are struggling in silence and more people who are getting the help they need.
Definitely. So. That's awesome. Honestly, I'm so excited about that.
Well, I appreciate your time and talking with me about this. We will continue to fight this together, us people in the mental health field. And hopefully we will, bring us to a point in this country where there isn't any stigma. There's no stigma on mental health, just like there isn't stigma on if you had cancer or diabetes or whatever other medical condition, that depression and other mental health issues will be seen like other medical illnesses are seen. That's the goal. So
yes.
And more resources and more money put into resources. So
definitely.
Anyways, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your work.
Yeah. And so thank you to all of you who are listening or watching. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week. Take care and be well.